Hey, this is Scott Tabor. This is episode 6 of my famous riffs for nylon string guitar, where I show you a famous riff, but adapt it to the nylon string guitar and hopefully even put some more elements in there than were in the original riff. And today we're going to talk about a really cool song by Coldplay called Clocks. Why this song? Well, it's got a really Latin essence to it that you might not be aware of, and we're going to talk about all that rhythm and theory stuff and how to play this on nylon string. There's something that you hear very often in rock music. It's an accent pattern that you might not recognize as being a Latin groove, but it is. Check this out. So when you hear that, and I'm sure you've heard millions of versions of things like that, it just sounds like a rock beat, right? But it's going like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and where we have kind of a unevenly distributed accents. There's 3 accents there. Well, this is really a rumba rhythm. So what's happening in this case, I'm playing a B5 chord. That's not part of the song, but just to give you an illustration, we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? One way to conceive of that, though, is to think in rhythmic groupings, which is actually way easier. So in the 4/4 time, we would count that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, what I just did. But if we count to 3 2 times and then count to 2 once, we have 3 3 2, and that pattern is a rumba, going 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. Very, very common to think of it that way, and it's a better way to think of it, I think, because it actually makes you produce the accents without even trying. If you play nothing but even strokes of anything, let's just pick an E minor chord here. All I'm going to do is go down, but if we count 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 at the beginning of each of those groups where we say the number 1, our brain just recognizes that as a new group and gives it a little bit more of a shove right there. That's what we want to do, is just a little more of a pulse on the number 1, like this. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. So when you hear a Latin guitar rumba thing, that's kind of underlying that. It might be a little bit hidden sometimes. If we did this, you can really hear the 3 3 2 idea, right? 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. I'm highlighting those accents with my bass note as well. But when you hear a rumba like this, it's in there, it's just a little bit more inscrutable, but the accents are there, and that's what makes it a rumba, going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Thinking of it in 4/4 time, the accent should be on the 1, on the and of 2, and the 4. So for this song, Clocks by Coldplay, they are achieving that rhythmic pattern that is essentially a rumba by playing nothing but 8th notes, but grouping them in that same way, 3 3 2. Now this is a piano riff, not a guitar riff, but we're going to adapt it for the guitar. The original song was in the key of E flat major. Starts with an E flat chord. Let's bring it down to D so that we can use the open D string. And that's one thing we want to do as nylon string fingerstyle guitarists, is play a riff or a melody, but include other parts of it. And that's what we would call a chord melody, or it's just more of a 3-dimensional way of playing. So we're going to see if we can add the bass notes in there as well on top of this riff. But first, we're going to play a D major chord, which you might know that way. Play it this way. We'll get rid of the pinky in a second. But all we need are these 3 notes right here. That's a triad, a first inversion D major triad. Then go to an A minor chord. Then go to an E minor chord. We're going to play the same 3 strings every time, though. We'll take it up an octave higher in a second. So we're going like this. You can hold the full E minor chord, or just this much of it, since we're not playing those strings yet. We have... If you find it hard to get from here quickly to A minor, one of the tough things about this riff for nylon string guitar is that very last note when you switch chords. So you could cut that note out and don't do anything there, give you a little more time to get to the next chord, and it still has the accent pattern that we want. If you have trouble with that, you could play A minor like this, which is a kind of a weird way to play A minor, but it makes sense in this case because we have a finger here that can stay on the string, what we call a guide finger, and you're more likely to make that transition smooth that way. Okay, if we want to add the bass notes here, we are forced to use our pinky on this D string, unfortunately. When we go an octave higher, we can use the open string. So watch this. Right, I'm playing the thumb at the beginning of every measure. Let's try to do the thumb every time that there's an accent like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's actually capturing the essence of the rumba right there. Let's try that with the chords. Notice that this is a 4-measure chord progression, and the A minor happens 2 times, right? So just speaking of the theory here, what is happening? The D major chord, so we might think that we're in the key of D major, but as soon as A minor rolls around, that can't be true, right? Because in the key of D major, all the C's are sharp, okay? And A minor happens twice, so we might think, well, maybe that's the tone center of the song because we're staying longer on that chord. But it's in the middle of the progression, so I would say that might not be the case. And then we end on E minor. Okay, so there is a key that's consistent with an E minor chord and an A minor and a D. That's the key of E minor or G major, right? So because this starts on D, if we want to say that that's the tone center, we could say this is a Mixolydian progression. Or maybe even Dorian, if we want to call that the tone center. I'm going to say it's kind of inconclusive. It could be construed as being in D Mixolydian, which is the same notes as G major or E minor, or A Dorian, which is another way of saying the same thing. I'm going to say it's simply the Aeolian mode on E minor, starting on the 7 chord, the flat 7. If E minor is the 1, D is the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. D chord would be the 7th chord, flat 7 because it's a minor 7th away from the root. Then A minor is the 4 chord, lowercase Roman numeral 4, and then we have our 1 chord, if that's how you want to think about it. Let's take it up an octave higher. So these same 3 notes, D and then A and then F sharp, we play them an octave higher. We have D here on the 10th fret of the 1st string, and then we have A here, same fret next string, and then F sharp would be right here. Well, you might know this shape. Maybe you played it way, way, way down here as an F chord. Based on the E form, we could say there's D major. So same exact voicing. Okay, then we have A minor, looks like this. Well, it looks exactly like a D minor chord, but way up here, that's C, A, and E. And then finally we have our E minor triad. So these might be chords that you've seen. E minor looks like that, more fully played, but doing a fragment here. And then we have the happy accident here. Well, it's not an accident because I moved to this key for this purpose, but D is going to be our bass note and it's open, thankfully. Then A is open and then E is open. So let's do it this way. Add the bass note every accent. See there, I ended it on the D major chord. If we do that and we call that the tone center, remember we can call that Mixolydian. Just different perspectives on kind of the same thing. So that's the main riff of the song adapted for a classical guitar. We can also strum it though using that same rumba pattern. Doing the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's a great way to do it. A golpe on the accents really makes it clear that it's an accent. And I'm making sure that I'm going down every one of those numbers in those different groups, 3, 3, 2, right? Going down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Sometimes we have to double up quickly to hit an accent that we want to make sure that we're doing. So that's why I'm going down so fast. Down, up, down, down. Maybe I should have gone down, up, but then it's harder to get the accent where we want it. So it's much more clear this way. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. And a golpe is when we tap with our ring finger right here. Good practice to do that simultaneously with the index finger downstroke. And finally, if we want to do this kind of thing, really kind of rumba-fy it, where it really sounds like Spanish guitar, we could go do something like this. So I'm taking this fuller chord. We have like not enough strings when we play D this way. I'm playing the C shape of D and going. This is a great little pattern going thumb, ring and middle together, and then index. That's our group of 3. 1, 2, 3. Go to the next string with the thumb. That represents another note in the chord, and then do that again. But then finally on the end, we can go here with the thumb and just do 2 of them, right? 1, 2. Like. come back to the original note with your thumb. Then A minor. You can do the same thing, or you play your pinky on the C note. It's a pretty common thing to do in Spanish guitar. On an A minor chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Same on E minor. Or go backwards. So if you play nylon string or Spanish guitar, there's all kinds of good stuff and even Latin stuff hiding in the popular music that you've been listening to. So my challenge to you would be take a song that you like, some popular song, and see if you can adapt it to nylon string guitar playing the riff, but also see if you can incorporate what's happening in the bass or maybe even the vocal melody and putting those together. It's a really great way to discover and uncover the logic of the fretboard and just become a better guitarist. Hey, if you like the way I teach, I have all kinds of tabs and tutorials on technique and music theory and showing you how to play specific songs in my membership. Check that out at theversatileguitarist.com/membership.